Okay, everybody has now entered into a letter of intent, an LOI, and you've officially given your deposit to open up the escrow so that you have a specific period of time in order to complete your due diligence. Now we have to do due diligence. This is where things start to become a little bit fun. This is where this is kind of the heart of the deal in a sense. The better you are at due diligence, the better you're going to be able to kill deals on the vine and be able to stay in the best opportunities. And the better the opportunity, the higher the possible reward in terms of the outcome, and the lower the possible risk. Again, this is all about risk mitigation as an investpreneur, and due diligence is the thing that is going to allow you to mitigate as much risk as possible, bringing it down. Again, don't forget the fact of the common saying, buyer beware, especially in these deals and these transactions, right? Really want to make sure that we add an asterisk to these types of transactions with the fact of like buyer beware, right? That's why due diligence is so important. It's up to you, the buyer, to make sure that you're kicking the tires, you're popping the hood, you're going under the car, and you're really checking this thing out to make sure that you know what you're getting into, you know what you would be purchasing, and you know what you intentionally are going to be taking possession of, and the risks that would be associated with the deal. And there are many possible potential risks. So again, additional asterisk. Highly suggest at this stage of the game that you start to put together a deal team, and your deal team helps you complete due diligence. You're going to want an attorney on your team, some sort of acquisition, somebody in acquisition law. You're going to likely want a CPA to better understand tax implications, as well as potentially do a little bit of forensic accounting on the asset in which you're going to acquire. You're going to want somebody from a technical perspective to be able to do a technical due diligence. Um, you're going to want somebody maybe on the growth and sales side to be able to get some eyes on it in terms of what the market actually is, and what a potential revenue engine could look like. The best way to approach doing this would be one of two ways. A, you're definitely going to have a due diligence checklist. Uh, that's going to be a process. This is all about organization. So just like the rest of the process is, and everything that we promote with investpreneurship and our build and our buy and our scale to sale, it's all process oriented. It's all about organization. It's all about keep it simple. Your due diligence, you're going to want to be very, very well structured in. We also recommend that you kick off a 100-day plan as well when you go into due diligence process. The 100-day plan is going to be, as you're going through your due diligence and you're completing your checklist and you're really understanding and analyzing this deal, what you're doing is you're putting your strategy together for once you do execute on the deal, what it's going to look like for you to take it over and start the integration process and actually start the ramp, right? So you kind of have a strategy in terms of the first 100 days, what you're going to do once you get into this asset. I highly suggest that you do both at the same time. This is the perfect opportunity to do so because it can pull you out of the weeds, right? Sometimes in due diligence, we get tunnel vision. It's like very easy to do, especially if we're going through a checklist and we're super organized, and we're going through and we're trying to figure out what's wrong with this thing, right? Because again, you're trying to get things to die on the vine. You're trying to identify the bad, understand the risks so that you can make good, timely decisions. So sometimes when we're in that type of mindset, we can get tunnel vision. And for that reason, that's why I want to pull you out and have you also do the 100-day plan at the same time, because the 100-day plan makes it fun again, and it gets you back into that strategy. It gets you back into that more like where you're going with it, alignment into your why, right? So for those reasons, I kind of want you to do them both at the same time. And I mean, right now we're including it all in the due diligence, but we may even find that we'll do a separate section for the 100-day plan onto its own right. Uh, in terms of due diligence, the goal, what you want to do is make sure you're understanding what you're getting into and the risks associated with it. Keep this risk mentality mindset as you're working through. Due diligence, just like the rest of the process of the buy process, it's all about communication. It's all about successful communication and expectations. Now, the good news is because you were so structured in your approach with the LOI, and you outlined intentions, and you identified what your intention was, and process was with due diligence, and you aligned with the seller to be able to make this a timely and easy um, experience where you're collaborating and working together to be able to get through it. You already have a framework there. Lean heavily into that framework. And again, communication is key. So make sure you're continually managing expectations with the seller so that you guys have a very clean line of sight continuity in terms of what needs to happen in order to move this deal down the road, right? Time kills all deals. Remember that, right? So you want to be able to keep moving the ball down the field. It kills time kills all deals for both parties, and realistically, uh, the seller wants to. It's all about time, value, money. So the seller wants to also get out of the transaction in a timely fashion as well. So you guys are aligned, and you are on the same side, and you're playing towards the same goal, which is to complete this transaction. So keep that in mind and leverage that to your advantage as you work together and keep good communication. That being said, you're going to want to be prepared with a very, very clean, accurate, timely, and realistic timeline for your due diligence. You're going to want to know what you need to do exactly at each step of the way, so that you can, again, communicate that, manage expectations, and then keep yourself accountable. Accountability is key. Same reasons why we want you guys to take the scale to sale challenge with simple profits and stay accountable to the process. Same reason why we want you to have a venture scout that's keeping you accountable to the overall journey. Accountability is key, and accountability keeps timeliness, and ultimately timeliness allows things to happen, right? So you're going to want to make sure you have a good sense of what your timeline is going to be, when you're requesting what, when you're going to be moving to what stages inside of this due diligence process, when you're getting other folks from your due diligence team involved. Now, if you don't have a due diligence team, that's okay. Uh, it depends on the size of the deal, right? So you got to really make sure that you're approaching this with the right lens and the right perspective. My suggestion is always going to be more is more, for sure, when it comes to due diligence. Probably one of the few times you're going to ever hear Chris say more is more. My common saying, especially if you listen to our content, is less is more. When it comes to due diligence, more is more. This is your opportunity to get out of a bad deal, right, prior to ever getting into it, right? So you really do want to do a good job, but you want to be realistic too, right? Like you don't want to go into a due diligence process and invest $30,000 into due diligence, putting together a stellar due diligence team, etc., for a $30,000 acquisition. Like that just doesn't make sense. So you need to make good, timely decisions, and it's up to you as a professional and an individual and an investpreneur to do that and navigate that. But again, I kind of want to get you some awareness in terms of those different parameters. We are trying to figure out different partners through the Startup Exchange community that can help you, through third parties, complete some due diligence and do so in a more efficient, effective, and specifically a cost-effective manner. So hopefully those are available in the community through different resources. If they're not, it's just a matter of networking. Go out and network, and be able to find them, and be able to put together the team that you need to be able to complete the deal and the transactions. You're going to want to be very, very clear in terms of the documents that you're looking to request. And again, that's inside of the due diligence checklist. What we do provide, for any of our premium buyers, anybody who's upgraded their account and is with us as a premium player in the market, we want to provide you with the templates. We actually give you our own due diligence checklist. What I use at Blue Collar Capital, uh, we have we launch these checklists and we run it in a deal room, and that's how we do all of our deals ourselves. So through our deal desk services, if you are subscribing to our deal desk services, you'll be able to have access to that. Again, everything is just templates. So just like in the LOI, and just like what we're going to say in the purchase agreement, everything is just a template. Buyer beware. Use at your own risk. Always defer to a subject matter expert that can cater and help you align towards your specific use case. Use these just as resources and starting points, right? But you will have access to that, and you can be able to work through. And then that way it's a pretty structured. Not all due diligence is created equal, right? Not every deal is the same. And I know I mentioned that earlier into our buy conversation when we started this process. But I just want to emphasize that again, not every deal is the same. Due diligence on a $2,000 SaaS acquisition, which yes, they exist. I mean, or a $2,000 newsletter, let's say. Yes, deals like that exist, is different than a $20,000 acquisition, is different than a $200,000 acquisition, is definitely different than a $2 million acquisition, right? Levels of complexity to deals are different. Levels of complexity to deals are different. Levels of due diligence is different. Process, process mostly the same, right? Process overall start to finish mostly the same. Level of complexity and depth of your due diligence likely going to change, right? So make sure that you're catering again your due diligence to your deal. Follow the checklist though, and make sure you're having good communication again with that due diligence team that you're working with. Um, this is all about communication. It's all about really knowing what you need, which again, that's why you want to work through your checklist, requesting what you need, and then having good communication feedback loops, right, with the seller and the rest of your deal team. If everybody can communicate well, deals get done efficiently, deals get done effectively, and likely there's a successful outcome one way or another for all parties, right? In terms of the due diligence period, that's why it's so important to set up a timeline. Again, in your LOI, you kind of already specified what this period of exclusivity is. You've put down an option to buy in a sense. Think about it like your LOI is almost like this option to potentially, make this purchase for a set period of time. And that's why you're putting money in to be able to complete this due diligence process. Totally important for you. It's cool if you don't end up moving forward and executing into the transaction. That's why we follow this type of process, but it's extremely important that you keep track of your timelines and you stay on top of what you have. Very, very important. I mean, that initial period of exclusivity, again, totally negotiable at the beginning, but once it's negotiated and once you've entered into it, you really got to keep on top of it. Again, that's why that timeline is really important, and that's why you're going to use your checklist. That means getting access to any information that you're looking for, whether it's financials, whether it's analytics, getting access, getting granted access to any systems so that you can actually get in and validate and verify. And again, depending upon who's in your deal team, they're also going to request access as well. So coordination is key in everything there, and you want to just keep on top of timelines. Typically when we're looking at due diligence, you really do want to go like top to bottom to the company. So again, think of the business system, right? Think about a business system, and everything that falls into the business system, you're going to want to work through due diligence with. A great thing to do if you're at the buy point and you're really thinking about doing a deal, I highly suggest that you get into the Simple Profits program. And I highly suggest that you go through that material, because that Simple Profits program is literally designed to set up a successful due diligence when you're a seller. And it's the other side of the table. And I think it's going to give you a competitive advantage and a nice insight on the buy side too, and probably get you into some better deals. So I do think that you should really do that. But again, you're following the business system when you're going through due diligence, right? Just think about that. That's probably going to be a great mindset. So legal, what types of commercial contracts are out there? What type of financial? What are the finances looking like? Like, what does HR look like? How are they managing people? What's the intellectual property that they have? What types of regulatory concerns, compliance matters, what taxes are going on, what's their sales and marketing look like, operations, roles, responsibilities. Like, literally, I think Simple Profit is probably the best version of what a true top to bottom due diligence walkthrough would be. But again, use your checklist and be able to lean into it. What you're trying to identify is, again, risks, right? So you're trying to identify things like the intellectual property risks, people risk, process risk, data risk, technology risk, scalability risk, external environmental risk, regulatory risk, due diligence about risk identification so that you can then categorize risks, right? The best way to do a deal is to be able to identify risk and then category bucket your risks into different categories, right? You're going to want to bucket into, is this a fatal roadblock? Is this a fatal risk? Is this something that kills the deal on the vine? Like something we won't be able to get past? And you got to be really honest with yourself, and you got to really be practical in terms of your approach. And if it is, get out of the deal, kill the deal. Again, let the deals die on the vines faster. Maybe you have to, whatever your terms are that you set up in the LOI or whatever the case may be. It's oftentimes worth it to just get out of the deal at this stage if you can't overcome some sort of fatal roadblock risk. If you can overcome the risks, so you've identified the risks in each of these sections as you're going through your due diligence, what you're going to want to do is then prioritize, is this something that needs to get done before, closing? Like in the closing, in closing diligence, uh, you know, pre-transfer, do we need the seller to tackle this, right? Again, think about real estate. I think probably due diligence in terms of this type of deal really correlates well to the real estate market. Most of us going through this process of investpreneurs, we've probably already done real estate in some way, shape, or form, whether it's our own house or you know we probably have some level of experience. Maybe we're investing in real estate, things of that nature. We seem to have a pretty common overlap with our audience of investpreneurs and the real estate market. Uh, think about when you're in a real estate transaction. You get into the deal, you get the deal under contract, right? So now you have that deal under contract. You're now going through your due diligence, which would be having an inspection come out, right? Making sure that there's no termites, right? That there's no ants that are eating things up, mice and things of that nature, bad wiring. You're getting somebody to check the septic if it's on septic to make sure that thing's not going to collapse. You're checking the roof. You're kicking the tires, right? You're really making sure that the foundation is strong. You're having an appraiser come out, giving you a value to the home to make sure that you can actually underwrite it in terms of your financing, mortgage. That's all the stuff that you're doing here in these deals, and that's what you're trying to do in your diligence here too, right? And that's why I'm trying to get you to put your 100-day plan together as well, because financing is also a real big part of this, and you're going to need to be able to understand what types of creative financing you need to come back at in the purchase, in your purchase offer to be able to get this deal done, right? So you want to understand what you're involved with now. You want to really truly understand, get a valuation benchmark for yourself as you're going through it by understanding the risk and taking a risk and associating it with cost. Because if there's a risk, that means something needs to be done. If something needs to be done, that there's a cost associated with it. So that needs to be factored into the deal, right? So now getting back to the risks bucketing, you're going to want to identify, is this something that needs to happen before I close? Is this going to be something that I do right away once I take possession? What's that going to cost? How much resources am I going to need for that? Is this going to be something that I can do in 6 months, right? Is this going to be a 0 to 12 month? Is this going to be a 0 to 3 month thing? Is this going to be a 3 month to 12 month thing? Is this going to be a 12+ month thing, right? And you're just going to want to go through and bucket and categorize and then itemize and then put a cost basis in a plan tied to that and then add that into your 100-day plan, because it's going to be an analysis of all of this information once you complete your due diligence checklist, once you complete your 100-day plan, once you've really thoroughly kicked the tires of whether or not you intentionally can go back to your freedom blueprint, afford to do this, right? So you don't want to be taking on unnecessary risks in this approach in doing a deal. Never get yourself into risk doing a deal. I understand that folks think that you need to take on liability, risk, reward. You need to take on risk in order to have a reward. The reality is not all liabilities need to be risky liabilities, right? Especially if you approach it the right way and it's not risk reward. It's really like good diligence, high reward, right? Do smart decisions, a less risky approach to entrepreneurship. That's what investorpreneurs, do. So once you complete this process and you're really thorough with your diligence, and again, Uh, Very much so, if suggest that you get subject matter experts involved. If you don't have the bandwidth and or resources to do so, leverage the heck out of the community. Put questions out there, ask questions, get other people to crowdsource. Right? You want to be, be an ingenuitive investpreneur at this period of time. Get the support and the resources that you need. Don't go this alone. That's probably the most important thing. Is just like, don't go this path, don't travel this path alone, because truly you do want to make sure that you're doing a really, really good job. The worst thing you can do is make a bad decision and get yourself into a bad asset that ends up turning into a loss, right? Number one thing we want to do as investors, let alone investpreneurs, is don't lose money, right? Don't get into a bad deal. So that being said, be diligent, be organized, communicate openly, right? Work your way through the process, complete your plans, your diligence and your 100-day plan at the same time. Assess and analyze whether or not this is something that you should be doing. If it is, move forward. Let's get into the next section, and then you're going to look to get this deal under purchase agreement.